Broadcasting live from Lothal. Good morning, Lothal. It's the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Good Morning Lothal, the Unofficial Star Wars Rebels podcast. I'm Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora.
How we doing, Rolly?
Good. A little bit under the weather again today. I don't know what the heck is going on, but I'm good. How about yourself?
I'm good, man. I'm jazzed right now. I got myself a little diet pineapple drink. I've been pretty busy. I have not had a day off in a while. Just kind of like working at work, working at night, working on the weekends. You know how it is.
I kind of get that whole working all the time now vibe. Even though I'm doing something on a more like personal business level, I am working more. I can say that it feels like I'm working a lot less as far as not physical, but like the whole idea of working a 9-to-5, working for yourself is, you feel it less, but that's not to say you are actually working more hours than the 9-to-5 job. So you do get exhausted by the end of the day. It's more a bit of a good feeling of exhaustion as opposed to, oh crap, I got to go back to the office tomorrow again and I hate my life.
No, I get it.
I feel you. I feel you, the whole working all day thing. Yeah, I get it.
Well, then let's get back on track and do exactly what we're here for, which is talk about Star Wars Rebels. And we got a hell of an episode for you today. But before we get to that, Rolly, what's happening around the galaxy?
Let's see what's happening this week in Star Wars.
So this week in Star Wars, we had a bit of an announcement at New York City Comic Con this weekend, which one of these days I will attend. I have been to the ReedPop Comics cons. The New York Comic Con's part of three major ones, which includes C2E2, which we've spoken about before. That one's in Chicago. That's the one I've attended. And I forget the name of the one in Seattle, Emerald City Comic Con. These are insanely huge cons. New York City Comic Con's one of them, and it usually does come with some big announcements from some of these larger fandom, so to say. So
would it be safe to say that like the original, the OG, the granddaddy San Diego Comic-Con has just become way too, like, it's too much now, like too commercialized, I guess, or like, that's basically
since San Diego Comic-Con is so commercialized, as far as the con community is concerned, I might be over speaking on some people's behalf since I've never personally been, but I know for somebody that typically goes to cons for autographs and photos, San Diego Comic-Con is just so commercialized. You can actually just go over there and get whatever you want with money. So I don't really include it anymore as part of these cons. For sure, it is the biggest one as far as announcements, along with the D23 Expo that we recently spoke about. But as far as the general, hey, I'm going to go to a con and I'm going to pay to meet all these people, it's not so much in that ballpark anymore, unfortunately.
Okay.
So anyways, getting back to New York City Comic Con, one of the bigger announcements that was announced as far as Star Wars is there's a new novel coming out next year. And this one's pretty relevant to what we're seeing on screen recently, more so with the Obi-Wan Kenobi series, as well as what we're touching on in this season with Rebels. It's a novel that's called Rise of the Red Blade. And this is really cool because it actually tells the story of a character named Iscott. And she is a Jedi survivor of Order 66 that happens to turn to the dark side, joining the Inquisitors with the hope of uncovering the truth about her past. So when I read that, I kind of got like a Reva. Not exactly the same, but I know that we've spoken before on this show that there are still some Inquisitor numbers that are unaccounted for, as in regards to seventh sister, second sister, fifth brother, the numbering system that they seem to use. So I want to know if this is one of those middle ones or if this is something a little bit further out that we haven't touched on yet, but I guess we'll find out. That's kind of that one I am definitely interested to read on.
That is pretty intriguing, and I'm curious. I mean, I know it takes forever to write a fiction novel, so props to whoever does that. So this idea has probably been cooking for a few years on the author. So I'm curious if when he saw Kenobi and he saw the character of Reva, he was like, oh shit.
I mean, I maybe, but at the same time, I have to believe that, particularly like with the Grand Inquisitor, who we know was a Jedi Temple Guard, we've touched on that in Rebels, right?
Yes.
Or if we haven't, giant spoiler.
No, I think we did.
Okay, good. again, particularly with him and what we've seen with Reva, we know that these are previous Jedi, and it makes sense, right? Because the idea of Order 66 was to wipe out the Jedi, but at the same time, we know they're converting Jedi to Inquisitors. So I don't imagine the author of this is too not off-put, but like conflicted with what he just saw in Kenobi. And we also don't know the ins and outs of this upcoming character. So just that whole idea of the Inquisitors mostly being previous Jedi, I'm sure the tendency would be to have similar backgrounds.
Okay.
But we'll see. So that was kind of the big news out of Star Wars this week. The only other thing I want to put out there to you guys, don't miss it. This is a reminder, Tales of the Jedi premieres October 26th, and that is on a Wednesday. So
sweet.
2 weeks, I guess. Yeah, 2 weeks from this upcoming Wednesday. So you'll be getting Andor and Tales of the Jedi in one day. So
a reminder to everybody that the two main storylines for Tales of the Jedi is like Count Dooku, young Count Dooku, his ascension through the Jedi ranks, and maybe kind of seeing how he might be eventually turning to the dark side, and Ahsoka, baby Ahsoka, growing up and in training. So I'm curious if they're gonna like interweave that storyline every episode. Are we gonna get an Ahsoka 1 week and then Dooku the next? You know what I'm saying? Or all of Ahsoka story?
Yeah, so from what I understand, it's way better than that, Pete. I'm given to understand that all 6 episodes are just dropping that day.
Oh, sweet. Okay.
Yeah, so
even better.
Yeah, that's what I hope so too. Considering that they're just shorts, I'd rather just watch every single one of them as soon as they become available.
Yep, sweet.
All right, so for the birthdays we have this week in Star Wars, first we have Juna Suotamo, October 3rd. He plays Chewbacca in the sequel trilogy. So basically, he got passed the torch from Peter Mayhew, who plays the original Chewbacca in the OG trilogy, and he goes on to play Chewie in the sequel trilogy. Next, we have Brian Blessed, October 9th. He voices Boss Nass in The Phantom Menace, and you guys remember him as the leader of the Gungans, who mysteriously disappears after Phantom Menace.
Right.
What exactly happens to Boss Nass? And that's something I need to look into, because I wonder if he just got like voted out for be like, hey man, you're probably eating too much of our food storage, so move on. Because not to poke fun at that, but he clearly did not look the same as the other Gungans.
No, he was a big boy. He was well fed.
Yeah, I guess kings, so to say,
That's true.
typically portrayed that way. So
That is true.
I guess it makes sense. And last but not least, we have Jason Wingreen, October 9th. He is the original voice of Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes Back. And a fun fact on that one, when the special, I believe it started with the special edition forward, Jason Wingreen's voice was actually removed from the reproductions that the original trilogies had, and his voice was replaced with Tamara Morrison, who does play Boba Fett and all the clones and Jango Fett in every entity that's been developed since. So I think that one's, I'm always the type to want to preserve originality, but that one definitely is a cool, appropriate adjustment, I would say. Tamara Morrison just has such a huge footprint in the prequel trilogy, including the animation and of course Boba Fett.
Right. It only makes sense.
Yeah. And then we have one important anniversary that I wanted to call out because it is very near and dear to why this podcast exists. The Clone Wars TV series was released on Cartoon Network on October 3rd, 2008. So 14 years back.
14 years ago. Wow, man.
Which is crazy because, again, that TV series started after the Clone Wars feature film came out to introduce the series, which I saw in theaters, knowing that Ahsoka was in there. And I was just like, this character's whatever. 14 years later, she's my favorite thing ever in any fandom. So,
right.
But yeah, I point that out because without Clone Wars, we don't have Rebels. And without Rebels, we don't have Good Morning Lothal.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Andor. We had the latest episode drop, episode 5. It was called The Axe Forgets. Before we get into it, I did want to point out one thing that I've been saying incorrectly. I might have already said it a couple of times. If you guys remember in the very first episode of Andor, it specifically gives the timeline 5 BBY, which is saying this is taking place 5 years before the Battle of Yavin.
Mm-hmm.
I initially thought I had read somewhere that Andor was going to take place over 9 years. As soon as I read that, I told myself something's wrong, and it's been kind of mentioned in social media lately, so I just want to correct this.
Okay.
Season 1 is going to cover 1 year. So we're going to get 1 year progression throughout 12 episodes of season 1 of Andor. So that means season 2 is going to cover the next 4 years that lead up to the Battle of Yavin. So
okay.
yeah, the time progression, once we get into season 2, we're going to be looking at the 3 episode arcs, which seem to be the framework for the show. Is going to be 1 year in every single 3 episodes in season 2. So I wanted to clear that up in case there's any confusion. If any of you guys out there remember that I was saying 9 years, hey, I was wrong. So let me correct that.
You know what's crazy is I just listened to I'm a big fan of Mark Maron, WTF podcast, and he just had the showrunner, the director, what's his name, Tony Gilroy. Okay, so he was on there talking about it, and the way that he didn't give any spoilers, obviously, because Disney will. But he did mention that like this was like 3 years of my life. He kind of said that in a sense of like, I think everything's already shot, everything's in the can. Like the show has been complete, and now it's just the wait process. It's the editing, and then they're going to release it periodically. So I hope season 2 comes. We don't have to wait a year after season 1 ends. Is I guess what I'm saying. I hope it comes a lot sooner than that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I have not read much into season 2. If that's the case, I didn't realize it was already done. So
yeah, I could be wrong, but the way he worded it, he made it sound like it was a long process to get this done. Like, and he mentioned 3 years, and that kind of reminded me of like the Peter Jackson Hobbit era of like where they would just shoot all 3 movies back to back. So I think they did that in this case.
Yeah, something we probably want to look into.
Okay,
but if that's the case, then let's see season 2 next year.
Yeah.
All right, I wrote here reactions to episode 4, but this is actually episode 5, like I mentioned. So, Pete, what were your takeaways from this latest episode?
Well, I really enjoyed the again, like you said right now, season 1 is going to take place over 1 full year, and then season 2 will be years 2, 3, 4. So that means that there's a lot of room to breathe in this first season as far as story building and story arcing and all that stuff. I like the fact that they're playing up the whole they can't trust him, they can't trust each other in this group that they're putting together in their plan that they're going for. Sorry, I'm stuttering a lot today. I don't have anything other than to say that it's still proving to be a very slow burn show, and definitely outside the realm of what we're used to for Star Wars. So I really don't have much to say other than I'm cool with the way it's going, and it's really cool, man. I don't know what else to say.
No, and I think part of that too, Pete, is this one was kind of one of those middle transitional episodes. Now that we know for sure that these are 3 episode arcs, we knew what was going to happen in this arc from the previous episode. Obviously, they're trying to infiltrate this Imperial base that's storing Imperial credits. I believe that's what they're doing. Well, so we know
it's like they're stealing. From what I got from it, they're going to steal the paperwork of the payroll system that the Empire has, which I'm curious on. It's not like a typical heist where, like, yes, there's bars of credit gold or whatever that they're going to go steal. This is more like they're just looking for data and information on who's on the Imperial payroll, which I found interesting.
I believe that's how it started in the fourth episode. But I think at one point they said it's not just the paperwork; that it's an actual like basically money pit. Or did I misunderstand that?
The one thing they did show was they panned over and they showed like these canisters that were.
Yeah.
What is that? Do you know what those are?
So when I saw that, I perceived that to be like basically like a bank vault. But
okay, it could be.
Yeah.
I mean, just because we're so used to Rebels, like, and they're always trying to steal like power generators and stuff like that. So maybe that's because that's what it looked like. It looked like a little battery or something. I don't know what that was supposed to be. I was confused on that sense.
Yeah, maybe I'm totally off here. And guys, if I'm way off, please correct me in the comments. But yeah, and then the whole conversations between Lothal and Mon Mothma, where they're basically running out of money. I could see that if this is an actual heist, like a bank heist. Yeah.
That makes sense that you put it together for me. I guess that was lost on me when I was watching it.
Yeah, but I guess we'll see. I guess they don't have a digital currency in the fancy schmancy Star Wars universe that actually rob a bank. So a few of the takeaways I had from this episode. Number 1, I love that they went further into, I don't love it. I actually feel bad for her. Mon Mothma's shitty family apparently does not end with her husband. Apparently, it also extends to her daughter that wants to have nothing to do with anything about her life, which was pretty insane. I just feel like Mon Mothma is probably such a lonely character. Like, she's leading two lives, but her other life, where her family should be her support system, is just not there. So I do not think that is going to end kindly at all for Mon Mothma. But
I mean, it's got to take a toll on her, like the whole leading of a double life and knowing that she's a spy and she's a rebel. She probably pulled away from her family a lot earlier on, just kind of like they're all checked out. Every member of that family is checked out and doing their own thing. So, you know, if this were set in the real world, then that dinner scene, that breakfast scene rather, like the daughter would be on her iPad or her phone and just be completely checked out and not listening to mom. So
it's crazy how accurate that Back to the Future 2 scene was when they were having dinner, right? You think about it now?
That's true.
Another takeaway that again, these are like horrid takeaways. I'm not saying I enjoy them, but I just love the portrayal. Cyril Karn, who's the main bad guy from the very first arc, who does not succeed in capturing Andor. I love how they're showing him visiting his mom, and he's just like hitting rock bottom. And I love the scenes in this one because they're specifically the entire episode sitting at the dinner table, and she serves him cereal with blue milk, of course, and he's just like getting the cereal and like looking at it and like tossing it. I have a feeling he's for sure going to get pulled back into the fold with the other ISB officer who's deep into wanting to uncover what happened at Ferrix. But I just love that at the moment he's just like questioning all his life choices up until this point, because he has hit rock bottom and he does not know what to do with himself. And then the other thing I really enjoyed was Cassian. Obviously, he's been put onto this new team. He was specifically told, "You're Clem. You are not to disclose who you are and why you're here, or even the fact that I assigned you here." Obviously, I'm speaking about Lothal. And he's put on the spot. He's questioned by, I forget the name of this new character, where he's basically questioning why he's here. And Cassian straight up tells him, "My name's Cassian Andor." And Cassian lays it all out there. Like, I think for me, that's him buying into the cause. Like, I'm against this, but for this cause that we're going for right now, my life's at stake. I'm going to be honest with who I am, because I need you guys on my side in order for me to survive this. And I think that's going to basically be the start of Cassian becoming a rebel through and through. That's my opinion anyways.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And yeah, that's what I was saying, was like the distrust, that whole turmoil that they had, and then it eventually they all get on the same page, and he's really taking more of a leadership role, especially when they were trying to plan out their little heist, I guess is what we're going to call it, where he was like, "So what if this thing doesn't run?" And they were like, "It's gonna run," but he's got that sense to say like, "But we need like a backup plan. Like, what if it does not work when we're there?"
Yeah, it's this episode for sure, just like out of nowhere, he basically becomes the leader, just because of his skills, like not necessarily his knowledge, but like the fact that he's thinking about things that these people aren't. And clearly, I think her name was Vess or Vel. She's gonna have to take a step back and listen to Cassian. And I think he revealed that he was being paid to be there. And I think obviously Lothal has done his research and he knows, what he got. And now Cassian is going to take on the leadership role and basically work his way up the ranks of the Rebel Alliance.
I am so intrigued by like the backstory of why he's already on the Empire's, watch list, like what he did. And the picture that they have of him when the hologram comes up, it's obviously from years ago because he doesn't have a facial hair at all. So it's whatever he did to be, wanted by the Empire. I'm very intrigued by where that's going to go.
That's true, because I just took that to mean he was on the radar after his incident on Morlana 1 when he killed those two corporate officers. But you're right, on the hologram, he doesn't have a beard. He didn't shave until after that incident, when he was going to basically go into hiding and take on this new role. So
so it's an older picture. He did something a few years ago, so he's been on the run. He's been in hiding for a while. So that's just another layer of intrigue that's got me hooked on this show.
Yeah, for sure. And then the last thing, I like how we got another shot of Luthen's shop of antiquities and high-end items. There was a new Easter egg. I don't know if you caught it, Pete. I did not catch it yet again. A buddy of mine told me this.
I'm reading it right here, and I still did not see that, man. We got some
So we got-
eagle-eyed watchers there.
Yeah, so we got another Indiana Jones Easter egg in Luthen's shop. In the previous episode, we got the Indiana Jones whip encased in carbonite. In this episode, we got the Sankara stones from the Temple of Doom, which are those basically the stones that he's after to take back for that village in Indiana Jones' Temple of Doom. So that was a really cool Easter egg, and I love that one specifically because if you guys, for the Indiana Jones fans out there, if you guys remember in the Temple of Doom, there was a Star Wars Easter egg. That movie starts in Club Obi-Wan at the very beginning of the movie.
I did not know that. That's cool, man. I did not know that. I mean, I know that George Lucas and Steven Spielberg are buddies or whatever, but I'm just curious. Disney doesn't own. I don't think they own the Indiana Jones property. I think that's owned by another.
I think that's still Lucasfilm. I mean, Indiana Jones is George Lucas's story, even though it was Spielberg's directing. So, yeah, that's a really good point.
So they are able to use like actual props from the movie to cool little Easter eggs. I liken it to, in the Marvel universe, the Collector. It's kind of the same situation where there's a bunch of cool stuff in the background that you're supposed to pick up.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, well, if that's the end of that segment, then let's move into today's episode. And today's episode is called Season 2, Episode 9. It's called Stealth Strike. So, Rolly, why don't you hit us with a synopsis?
Okay, so when the Empire uses a powerful new weapon to capture Ezra and Commander Sato, Rex and Kanan must put their differences aside to save their friends.
Now, that is a very, like that sentence alone does not fully portray the levels of badassery that this episode had. I really enjoyed this episode. Other than the first two, which obviously got us off with a bang, I think this might be my favorite one of the season so far after that, because there was a lot of well, I mean, we'll get into it. So the episode starts with Ezra. He's on board a Corellian cruiser traveling through hyperspace, helping Commander Sato locate a missing ship in the Del Zenith system. Ezra informs him that he already checked the star charts and can confirm that nothing is out there. Sato, of course, is annoyed by him and tells him that Hera suggested he would be helpful on this mission. So, like, maybe you should be helpful. So Ezra uses the Force to connect to the missing ship, but instead senses an event that is about to occur, and the cruiser is suddenly pulled out of hyperspace, which has never been seen before, to find the new Imperial ship is responsible for the occurrence, and Sato immediately sends a distress signal to the Phoenix Squadron before the Empire jams the signal. So right off the bat, we start with some action. Of course, there has to be a little bit of levity and comedy where Ezra's being the annoying little teenager Sato has to put up with because Hera said it would be good to have him, and it will turn out, spoiler, that he is pretty good to have around. But the main thing that we were supposed to see as an audience that was jarring was the fact that something pulled the ship out of hyperspace, which apparently you cannot do when it's in hyperspace. So take it from there, Ro.
Yeah, so Sato sends that transmission, and the very next scene we cut to Hera and the rest of the Ghost crew listening to said transmission, and it's cut off right when Sato says basically we're being pulled in. And so Hera starts telling the team the transmission was jammed, but still, that doesn't make any sense. You can't pull a ship out of hyperspace because you never know exactly where it is. A tractor beam can't get a lock. And then Sabine chimes in because she has some knowledge of this, and she says, that's because this isn't a tractor beam, it's a gravity well. When I was at the academy, they were developing a new cruiser with gravity well projectors powerful enough to pull a ship out of hyperspace. Kanan says, well, it looks like they finished it. And Sabine says, chances are they're still testing the system. If they follow Imperial procedure, the testing zone for this type of ship wouldn't be that large. You'll probably find it not far from where we lost contact with Commander Sato. Kanan tells the team, all right, everybody, gear up. We're going out there. And Hera stops him in his tracks and says, not everybody. You and Rex will go to that system. Find that ship, and I bet you find Ezra and the others. Kanan, who I previously thought was already like patching things up with Rex, doesn't seem to be just there yet. And he goes, not Rex. I'll take Seb or Sabine. And Hera says, Rex's military experience will be invaluable, and he can also impersonate a stormtrooper. And Kanan goes, exactly, because he is a stormtrooper. And Hera says, no, he was a clone trooper. And Kanan responds, it's the same thing. And Hera tells him, Kanan, I sent Ezra. This is the only way. And Kanan says, all right, we'll get him back, all of them. So after that scene, we cut back to the Imperial ship, which we just saw take hold of Sato's command ship. So on that ship, Sato and the crew have been captured, and Sato and Ezra are being escorted to the Imperial Admiral. The Admiral sees them and says, "Rebels, out here searching for your missing patrol, I assume." Sato says, "We are members of the corporate alliance. You have taken possession of my ships illegally, and I demand you release us." The Admiral responds, "You are in a position to demand nothing, Commander Sato. Ah, yes, I am familiar with your activities in this sector. I suspected if we captured even one rebel ship, others would race to the rescue, but I dared not hope we'd capture someone as significant as you." And then he turns to Ezra and he goes, "And what would your name be, young man?" And of course, Ezra responds, "Jabba the Hutt," who is his original persona since episode 1 of Rebels.
It's one of his aliases.
Yeah. So the Admiral responds, "Indeed, you are a tad small for a Hutt, but I know someone else that goes by the name Jabba, Ezra Bridger. I imagine Agent Kallus will be quite pleased to hear you have joined us." So back at the Rebel base, we see Kanan and Rex literally gearing up to go out on this mission to go save these guys. And by gearing up, I mean they're going to be impersonating stormtroopers.
Right.
And the entire time, Kanan's arguing with Rex that this wasn't his idea, and reminding Rex that he needs to remember not to forget what side he's on. Again, I don't know what more Rex has to prove at this point. It's more so that they're just bickering over leadership of the crew.
Right.
Kanan, of course, has his Jedi input. Rex has his clone trooper war input. So it's kind of hard to argue with Rex on a lot of this stuff, because a lot of this stuff is very tactical. So if I had to pick a side, as much as I love Kanan, I got to side with Rex on this. He's got the experience. Mm-hmm. So Rex tells him, I would never be on their side or wear their junk armor. And that's when Zeb kind of walks in and he brings 2 KO'd stormtroopers and tells Rex and Kanan he has their disguises ready.
Yeah.
So as they're putting it on, Rex goes, "This garbage is nothing like clone armor." And Kanan goes, "Looks a little tight on you, old man." Poking fun at Rex's weight. Rex goes, "Yeah, well, at least I know how to wear it." And Hera chimes in and says, "Kanan, Rex, once you're in, signal me and I'll come in with the Phoenix Squadron to blast you all out." And Kanan goes, "How are we getting in anyway?" And when he says that, Sabine shows up with one of those Imperial shuttles. And Kanan goes, "How is it that the Empire lets us keep stealing these things?"
There's so much comedy in this episode. Like, there's a lot of good, funny, like, interactions between those two.
Yeah, and I love how this show never shies from poking fun at the obvious silliness of the Empire and how they're so bad at everything.
Yeah.
But again, I like to remind the audience that for me, I've always seen that as the Empire won. They don't have to focus on such small details, even though we're seeing the opposite in Andor. But it was still a bit of the same, honestly. That's how I've always explained to myself why the Empire always seems so dumb. It's just they won, so why are they going to need to be so smart?
Exactly.
So after that, Rex and Kanan are heading through hyperspace in the Imperial shuttle, like we just mentioned, to Ezra's last known position, and they're still arguing about their Jedi clone relationship. They can't get on the same page, and they specifically argue this because Sabine, who showed up with the shuttle, also appeared to have the time to paint a logo in the cockpit, and it was basically a logo of Rex and Kanan fighting back to back. Yeah. And they're just like, Kanan has like this smirk on his face in the painting, and Kanan's like, "How does that even look like me?" He's referring to the smirk because clearly he doesn't enjoy Rex's company. So that's where this argument really stems from. And she's just Sabine knows that these guys can't get along. So that's her way of both poking the fire and also, trying to help them overcome their differences, which it's just Order 66 when it comes down to it.
Right.
So as they're approaching the new Imperial starship in the shuttle, they are informed that the testing zone is off limits to them, and Rex proceeds to relay the emergency codes to the Imperials at the annoyance of Kanan still. And Rex tells Kanan, "Cody and I practically invented these emergency protocols back in the Clone War. Trust me, the codes are good." And after he says that, the transport is immediately cleared for emergency landing shortly after that. So after that, the scene cuts back to the Imperial Admiral contacting Kallus to inform him of the high-profile rebels he has captured. So the Admiral tells him, "Agent Kallus, our new gravity weapon reeled in a catch of rebels who I believe you're familiar with, Commander Jun Sato and a young one who calls himself Jabba. And Callus goes, "You have Ezra Bridger? Excellent work, Admiral. Lock him in a secure cell under triple guard." The Admiral goes, "Triple guard? He is but a child." And Callus tells him, "I warn you, do not underestimate that boy." The Admiral again responds, "I'm certain that the Imperial Navy is more than a match for one boy, whatever he calls himself." And Callus goes, "We shall see. I'm on my way."
Famous last words.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's like Callus, rather than like reassure him, do what I'm telling you, he's just like, F it. Like, if you really are that dumb, like, let your mistake be my victory. So Callus clearly has no care for, you know, the oversight that this Admiral is having on Ezra. And it's hilarious because the Admiral knows his name is not Jabba the Hutt. He knows Ezra Bridger, but he like doesn't even have like the knowledge and like wanting to do his research. I'm sure that at this point the Empire has records of who and what exactly Ezra Bridger has done, and this guy's just like, he's just a child. So nope, nothing beyond that. I don't need to know anything. So after Rex and Kanan are cleared to land, they infiltrate the new Imperial ship and they tell Chopper to plug in and locate Ezra. So Chopper finds out that Ezra is being taken to a secure cell, obviously at the request of the Admiral. Ezra, meanwhile, is able to break free from the stormtroopers escorting him to his cell, locking them into the cell during the process. And that was a cool little scene too, because they show Ezra use the Force to ignite the saber, who is on the hilt of the stormtrooper. I don't think I've ever seen that in Star Wars. So
no.
Speaking to Ezra's strengths here in season 2 of Rebels at such a young age. So after that, Ezra takes control of the saber and he uses it and he shoots at 2 stormtroopers that are running towards him, which happens to turn out to be Rex and Kanan. After he takes off their helmet, he's basically like, "Oh shit, like I messed up. I shot my 2 compatriots." So he wakes them up and Kanan's like, "What happened?" And Ezra's like, "Well, I mean, you know, I was being attacked and I shot." He's like, "You shot us? I can't believe you shot us." And Rex, on the other hand, is kind of like, "You shot us, man. Great job."
Yeah, he says something cool. He was like, "You should have killed us," basically. Like, you.
Oh yeah, that's correct.
You shouldn't have said it to stun, because Rex is an old time war veteran badass. Yeah,
seriously. So after he wakes them up, Ezra's like, "We got to find Sato and sabotage this ship. They have this gravity weapon thing." And as he's explaining it, he sees that Kanan and Rex already know what he's talking about. And Ezra's like, "You know all this." And Rex goes, "So what's your plan?" And Ezra says, "Well, we should probably split up. I'll take Chopper and he can get me to the reactor that powers this thing. You two bust out Sato." And Kanan goes, whoa, we're not splitting up. Let's get Sato and get out of here." And Rex says, "The kid's right. We have to destroy this ship." And Kanan responds, "Do you know how many stormtroopers are heading this way?" And Rex says, "It doesn't matter." Kanan says, "We can't afford to separate." And Rex tells him, "We have to protect the fleet." At this point, they're full on arguing about what the plan is. And Ezra says, "Will you two quit it already? Part of the reason I took this mission was to get a break from this. Chopper and I will meet you at Sato's ship." Kanan looks at Rex and says he takes after Hera sometimes, which I thought was really cool, because I have spoken about the imprint that I started seeing earlier on, the Hera sees in Ezra, which I love, because I love Hera so much in this show. So after that, Ezra and Chopper head to the power reactor, and Chopper proceeds to sabotage the power to the gravity well. And during that entire process, Ezra's kind of distracting the workers that are there, while Chopper plugs in and does as such. So they're blasting at Ezra. Ezra's dodging blasts and deflecting left and right. Chopper sees that Ezra's in trouble, so as part of him sabotaging, he turns off the gravity in the entire room, and Ezra and all the other Imperials start floating in the air. And as he's about to turn the gravity back on, Ezra's like, "Don't you do it. Don't you do it, buddy." And of course, he turns the gravity back on, and in typical Chopper murder child fashion, he drops all the Imperial workers to their deaths. And Ezra manages to survive, thankfully. But yeah, Chopper has to do things in like the biggest fashion, and in this case, it is actually quite devastating.
And we love him
every
for
single
it.
time.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's just kind of like the arms come out and it's like we're just supposed to like, oh well, he just murdered 20 people. That's cool.
Yeah, it was at least like 20 people, right? It was insane. So while that's going on, Rex and Kanan at the same time are getting to Sato's cell, and they do manage to get to him and rescue him. But it's at that moment that the stormtroopers have already alerted the rest of the ship that there's rebels on there. So the ship is on full lockdown. All the stormtroopers are looking for the rebels. So even though they were able to get Sato and the rest of the Phoenix Squadron out of their cell, now they have to make their way out of the ship and get to Sato's ship. So Sato tells Kanan that they have to rescue Ezra, not just leave. And Kanan tells them Ezra's fine. And Sato's like completely surprised, which I thought was funny because this episode started with Sato being annoyed by Ezra, and it progresses into Sato being basically shown exactly what Ezra is capable of. So I think Ezra, after this hopeful, successful mission happens, he's going to start earning a lot of cred with Commander Sato. So in the middle of the shootout with several stormtroopers who are now, like I said, all alerted to the rebels' presence, Rex and Kanan proceed to shoot their way out. However, they do become overwhelmed because the entire crew ship is after them, and Rex tells Kanan to take Sato and the crew back to the ship while he continues to fight off the stormtroopers. Kanan, they show him and he's kind of surprised. He's shocked because him and Rex haven't gotten along, and now Rex is basically here volunteering to sacrifice himself so that the rest of the team can get away. In that few seconds, Kanan clearly doesn't like the decision. He's like, well, what's going to happen with you? But he ultimately lets Rex make this sacrifice. So they show Rex fighting off some of the troopers, but one finally gets him at the very end, firing a stun shot. So clearly they're trying to take him hostage as opposed to killing him. So they capture Rex and they show him being escorted to the Admiral. And the Admiral sees him because he doesn't have his helmet on anymore, and he goes, a clone. And Rex goes, well, you're a bright one. And the Admiral says, I had your number scanned, 7567, Captain Rex. You were a hero once. You and your kind brought peace to the galaxy. Why would you lower yourself to fight with traitors? Where is your loyalty? And Rex tells him, my loyalty was to the Republic, not your empire.
Yeah.
The Admiral responds, I served the order you put into place, Captain. I believe you want to do the right thing. Surrender all your compatriots and I will offer you not only immunity, but reinstatement at an Imperial training academy. You could wear that armor and be proud of your service again. Rex says, oh, I'm proud of my service, but I really hate this armor. And the Admiral goes, that's unfortunate because you're going to die in it.
I love this interaction.
Yeah, we're gonna say the same thing,
dude. This was this scene right here where that my loyalty was to the Republic. Like the way he said it, like I was just like, oh, that hit me with like pride. Like that was awesome.
Yeah, because you knew at that point you were basically gonna get a huge callback to everything that the Clone Wars stood for, and I love how he finishes it yet again by emphasizing how much he hates the scene.
Yeah. Right.
And that reminds me, I totally left out the best part of that scene where Ezra shoots Rex and Kanan, because Kanan does also mention the suit and says, man, this armor really doesn't do anything.
Yeah, it's like a plastic like costume.
Yeah, it's legitimately plastic compared to the clone troopers armor.
Right.
So during that scene, as Rex is basically being interrogated and tortured, Kanan senses through the Force that Rex is in trouble. Remember, he's getting Sato and the rest of the Phoenix Squadron to Sato's ship. Mm-hmm. And Ezra at this point is with them, and he tells Ezra to take Sato and the crew to the ship. And he specifically tells him, I have to rescue my friend, which I found very weird and cool at the same time, because I guess in those few seconds I was talking about where Rex is basically telling Kanan, I'm going to sacrifice myself for you. Yeah. It all clicks and makes sense to Kanan at that point.
Right.
Well, this guy is going to do that for me. He is my friend. He's more than a ex-clone that I have to tolerate.
Right.
So they cut back to the Admiral interrogating Rex, and we have a little bit more dialogue. And the Admiral tells him, I'm going to terminate you, not like a soldier or honored veteran. Oh no, you will be discarded and forgotten like an obsolete piece of field equipment. Wow. And no one will know or care. And Kanan, who has stepped into the room at this point, disguised as a stormtrooper, says, I will. And he proceeds to blast all the troopers in the interrogation room while the Admiral flees. And Rex goes, wow, nice to know you care. And Kanan goes, don't ruin this moment. So after that, Kanan and Rex escape on an escape pod while the rest of the rebels get to Sato's ship and break free from the Imperial ship. They pick up Kanan and Rex's pod and jump to hyperspace at the direction of Ezra, who just spoke to Chopper to confirm that he did indeed sabotage the Imperial gravity well. So they punch into hyperspace, but yet again, the ship is unable to escape the gravity well and they're pulled out of hyperspace basically before they can even take off. So immediately Ezra's like, what's going on? You just told me that you sabotaged the weapon, and Chopper in droid speak is telling him, wait for it. Just wait for it.
Yeah.
And sure enough, as it turns out, one of the Phoenix Squadron members who's flying the cruiser tells the rest of the squadron that all the ships, not just theirs, are now being pulled towards the main Imperial ship with the gravity well. So what happens after this is basically there's like, I think it's like 2 Imperial light cruisers and maybe 1 Star Destroyer, including this ship, that are being pulled to the ship. And all these cruisers just proceed to crash into the main ship, and they destroy every single ship that's part of that Imperial fleet. And of course, Sato's last ship is the last one that's going to be pulled in. So since these ships are now crashed and being destroyed, the gravity well loses its hold on the rebel ship and they're able to escape. And this for me was a really cool scene because they're basically, what ends up happening is Chopper murders thousands upon thousands in one fell swoop with a record kill count.
Damn.
Yeah, and this scene in particular, I remember being on Reddit maybe over a year ago, and I ran into something that was hilarious. And some guy, some clever Star Wars fan, if you're out there listening, please say something. He actually wrote the entire kill count for Chopper throughout the duration of Rebels, and this incident was the highest kill count. And he basically said, well, the size of that new Imperial vessel is the equivalent of like some other type of Star Destroyer, which houses 47,000 employees plus 5,000 stormtroopers. So just in like basically this one incident.
That's funny.
Yeah, he says that Chopper kills 50,000 Imperials. So just from, sabotaging that one weapon, so to say.
Right.
So if you need a better account for Chopper's murder child comments, look no further than this episode.
Yep.
So after that, the show winds down and we see Ezra, Kanan, and Rex join Sato in the cockpit. Mind you, they're still flying through hyperspace. They've escaped, and Sato basically just wants to commemorate them for their actions. So Commander Sato says, "My crew and I owe you our gratitude, all 3 of you." Ezra says, "Thanks, Commander. When you 2 aren't fighting each other, you fight really well together. Jedi and clones. Now I get it." Obviously, he's speaking to Kanan and Rex at this point. Kanan goes, "Kids, crazy ideas." Rex goes, "Yeah, thanks." They're like kind of embarrassed by what's going on here. I don't know why. And Kanan goes, yeah, I know. Rex goes, "Well, I guess there's nothing more to say about it." And Kanan goes, "Hey, Rex." Rex turns around, and this is a really cool scene. Kanan salutes Captain Rex, and Rex responds by saluting his Jedi back as well. And that's the end of the episode.
Yep. That was a really, I loved that tension that has been brewing between Rex and Kanan for this whole season, and for it to come to this pressure point where Kanan had no choice but to finally admit that this he's on the up and up. He was a clone, or he is a clone, but he was not one of the bad ones. So I really love that transition that happened midway through this episode, and at the very end it was like, that's the button on it. It's like, Kanan, we're cool now. We're good. That was a really cool ending.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a really fun episode. The comedy as well as the development and the solidification of the relationship between Rex and Kanan.
Right. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of that episode. And next week, we will be talking about Season 2, Episode 10, and it's called The Future of the Force. So there's going to be a lot of Jedi happenings in that one for sure. But before we let you guys go, I do want to remind you guys to please like, share, subscribe, and rate us. If you haven't done so already, please do so. I want to remind everybody to visit radiolothal.com if you want to go see some of the older episodes. I know you can go through YouTube, but if you go through radiolothal.com, there's a nice little archive section that you can go straight to it. And just want to hit that website again. Haven't done that in a while. Also, to my traditional podcast listeners, remember, we're here and we're on several different platforms, anything that you can think of: Apple, iTunes, Google Play Store, iHeartMedia, all those things. That's where you can find us. So if you have any questions or comments or concerns, please drop us a line and let us know how we can improve the show. We're always open to an open discussion on anything Star Wars related. And Rolly, you have anything else to add?
Nope. I just want to, wish all our fellow rebels out there. Hope you guys have a great weekend. I hope you guys have been enjoying the content. Please feel free to, like I always say, drop some comments and join in on the discussion.
Yep. So if nothing else, then this has been your host, Pete Salas, along with
Rolando Zamora,
saying, may the Force be with you always. Goodbye from Lothal.